Morning. So I've had a nice stroll this morning from Coton Hill. Who thinks I've travelled the furthest this morning? I've probably travelled the shortest distance. Any advance on Shrewsbury outskirts? Rural Shropshire? Wales? They hear Wales? How far into Wales? That far, okay. How are we doing with the stream, guys? We're good to go? Okay, so I'm an account director at Mitra Marketing. We're a national marketing agency based in Shrewsbury, and the Marches Growth Hub have kindly invited me to come and have a chat with you this morning on one of my favourite topics, which is social media and Google, how to win friends and influence people. So everything nowadays is online, social media is taking over the whole world, and it's useful to have some insight into how to put those areas into practice in your own business. I like this slide because it's all about the rise of the machines, and increasingly I see a contrast between the requirement to be human and social, and at the same time manage some very, very powerful technology. And currently I think the machines might be winning, but we're the humans, so we have to fight back. And who can name this film? The 300. And the point about the 300, I think, is its quality over quantity. The Persians had the much larger army, but the Greeks had better quality warriors. And nowadays, you'll go to lots of events on social media and content marketing, and everybody will be encouraging you to publish content to find your audience and promote your business. But the challenge is increasingly becoming, how do I rise above the noise and how do I be heard? And if everybody's a publisher, how do I actually get my message through to the audience that I'm trying to communicate with? And increasingly we find it's the winner takes it all. With the way the machine algorithms are working nowadays across Google search and all the social networks, only the very best content actually wins, and second-rate content or just good enough content doesn't really cut it anymore. So first place gets all the prizes, second and third place not so much. Now the next set of slides I'm going to show you have been produced by Rand Fishkin of Moz. So hands up who's heard of Moz. They're a huge search marketing, social media marketing organisation. They publish some really great tools. I highly recommend you look at their stuff, and they regularly publish lots of really useful, insightful information. And they can produce better slides than I can, so we're going to share some of their insights together today. You'll notice the edited bubble. So I've included all of the slides you're going to see today in a download, and the link is at the end of this presentation. And I've linked to the full version of the slide decks because there's lots of good stuff in there, but I can't actually squeeze it all into a 1 hour presentation. So who's heard of machine learning? Okay, so the computers used to be programmed by us human beings, but nowadays the computers are programming themselves. And that's a really scary concept. In fact, Elon Musk, who founded Tesla, is actually worried about Google's artificial intelligence taking out humanity. So there's some real ethical and moral challenges around this. But bringing it back to marketing, we have to understand that we're being judged to a higher and higher standard every single day. And when I'm looking at a website, for example, one of our clients' websites, you have to look at how good is this website. And we have to apply a very critical approach, and you have to think about, can I really afford to have some mediocre content in there if it's going to drag down the average and actually harm the overall position? And in the world of modern search marketing, one rotten apple really can spoil the whole barrel. Who's heard of RankBrain? Okay, RankBrain is Google's huge artificial intelligence program, and it is now the third most important factor in the Google ranking algorithm. And we care about the Google ranking algorithm because that makes the decision about whose website gets shown to people and whose website doesn't? Who's heard of Hummingbird? Okay, a couple of hands up at the back. So Hummingbird was Google's re-engineering of their whole search engine to actually start to understand semantic language. So early Google, when they first launched 14, 15 years ago, was pretty much a text retrieval database. You typed some words, they found things that matched those words. And it was pretty easy for us search marketers in those days to game the algorithm. We understood how it worked, we did the things the algorithm rewarded, and we got our client sites to the top of the search results. Nowadays, it's becoming increasingly difficult to game the algorithm. And in fact, if you're pitting yourself against Google's resources and Google's very smart people, you're going to lose. So we have to focus on quality. So this set of slides, 7 biggest trends. We're going to cut out the first few, and we'll cut out some more as well. Who's on Twitter? Okay. Who's noticed Twitter coming up in the Google search results? Quite a lot nowadays. Going back a few years, there was a commercial arrangement between Google and Twitter, and Google actually paid Twitter lots of money to have access to what Twitter call the fire hose. And with the fire hose, they had all the tweets live being plumbed straight into the Google search engine. But what's happened nowadays is Google are looking at tweets increasingly to see what the quality is like and decide which ones are worth promoting. So Google Plus, who's on Google Plus? Yeah, not so much anymore. Google Plus was a good attempt, but Google are probably as good at running a social network as Facebook are at running a search engine. So Google Plus, if you're on there and it's working, great. If it's something you haven't got onto just yet, I probably wouldn't bother. Twitter is increasingly being shown in Google search results for real queries, for real searches, for real people all the time, including on the mobile presentation of search results. Have you all noticed how it's becoming a mobile world the whole time now? And what's happening is Google are actually redesigning their desktop properties so that they resemble the mobile properties, because that's where the greater part of the audience is. And when we work on strategies with clients, we actually have a mobile-first approach nowadays. So, using lots of clever analysis, Moz have worked out that tweets show up in roughly 6% of Google search queries. So this social stuff isn't just great on social media platforms, it's also great in Google search results. So having learnt this, what can we do? How can we take advantage of these developments in our own campaigns? Hashtags. Who uses hashtags in their tweets? Good. Straight into Google search results. Who tweets at brands? Tweeting at brands in a meaningful, conversational way can actually get you some good entries into the search results as well. And social media increasingly is where news is actually discovered first. And who's noticed nowadays that what you see on the broadcast news on the BBC or Sky is what you saw on Twitter yesterday? I see that increasingly. So Google are looking at tweets and they're deciding which ones to show, and they care a lot about recency. So who knows what the half-life of a tweet is? Any suggestions for the half-life of a tweet? How long is a tweet valid and valuable for?
7 seconds.
7 seconds is pretty good. I'd have about 10 minutes, because otherwise you're just lost in the complete deluge of all the other tweets. Okay, so if we're going to be working on Twitter, as well as making our own friends, it's usually a good idea to make some friends with people who are already influential on the topics that we care about. And there are some really great tools that are linked to from these slides that can help you discover who are the influencers in the niche where you are trying to gain an audience. Who's heard of keywords? So early days of Google, we used to think about the searches that the users were doing, the words they would be using in those searches, and we would target our web pages at those searches. That's all changed now with the rise of all the machine learning and the very sophisticated algorithms. We actually have to target the searcher's intent. We actually have to answer the question that they're asking. We don't just have to target a particular set of words. So Google's really clever. You may have noticed in the last year or two that Google actually understand what you're trying to get to, perhaps more quickly than you do. And it was either Eric Schmidt or Larry Page in the early days of Google who said their goal was actually to answer your question before you had thought to answer it. And they're getting pretty close now. So if I search for a famous circle of big rocks, Google show me Stonehenge. Stonehenge wasn't in the search. Google understood the intent of the search. If I search for a large circular thing for scientists in Switzerland, I haven't mentioned the Large Hadron Collider, but Google understand exactly what I'm looking for and show it to me. So when we look at the correlations between web pages that have the target keywords well presented within them and the web pages that are being shown to searchers, keyword presence isn't such a big deal as it used to be. A few years ago, keyword presence was the be-all and end-all, plus links. Nowadays, it's pages that actually match the searcher's intent and provide the best answer, which gets back to my other theme of its quality over quantity every time. So it used to be we could just have some keywords in the page and Google would show our pages to searchers. Nowadays we have to have a whole lot of supporting language that is semantically related to the topic that the searcher is looking for, and then our pages have a better chance of coming up in the results. So how can we adjust our marketing? What do we need to do to take advantage of these developments? Keywords are still there. They're just not as important as they used to be. And it's really important to make sure that the content that you show the user does a really good job for them. It's no good just taking the minimum effort to put a page up on your website that answers a question in a half-hearted way. If you can't do a really good answer to the question, it probably isn't worth your while targeting that question in the first place. So on-page SEO, who's heard of SEO? Can anybody give me a definition of SEO? What does it stand for?
Search engine optimization.
Thank you. So search engine optimization has a bit of a tarnished reputation. A few years ago, Google released some algorithm updates. One was called Penguin, another was called Panda. And all the things that early generations of SEO work had done were pretty much undone by Google Panda and Google Penguin. So building lots of pages full of rubbish content, manufacturing lots of links from other websites to your website no longer help you. In fact, they probably harm you. So what does SEO require in 2016? Think about the user the whole time and do the very best job that you can and put together some quality information. In many ways, the best advice is ignore Google, forget about the search engine entirely, and just think about the user and how you can help them. And that, if you do those things, then Google will look after itself and you'll do pretty well. So the biggest topic today is all about machine learning and how can humans survive in a machine-dominated world. RankBrain is one of the things that Google speak about. There are lots of things that they don't speak about, and we can only assume there's an awful lot going on that isn't being published. And Google can now answer all sorts of queries and show you the right information without actually mentioning any keywords at all in the query. And they also understand the relationship between lots of similar queries and probably will show the same results. So how do we apply this? We think about the user we're trying to help. We have a chat with some real people. We understand the questions that they're probably going to ask and how they would phrase the question rather than how we would phrase the question. We make sure we provide a really good answer and we actually include some of their language within our pages. So the whole thing we have to concentrate on is quality. So when I use the term SERP, I'm talking about the search engine results pages, the pages that are presented to users searching on Google. And when I talk about bounce rate, I'm talking about when people pogo stick. So I do a search on Google, I click through to a page, it's rubbish, I go straight back to Google. That's a bounce. Who thinks that when a user bounces on your page, it improves your good standing with Google? And who thinks it probably harms your good standing with Google? Absolutely right. People bouncing off your pages is a really worrying thing. And it's actually worth using some tools such as Google Analytics, which will show you all the pages of your website and give you some great data on what users actually do when they get to see those pages. So we're talking about creating the best content that we possibly can, and Rand at Moz coined this phrase, 10 times content, to try and get the concept across. 10 times better than the competition. All the prizes go to first place. The winner takes it all. Mediocre content isn't going to get you there. I shan't take you through the details of this slide. I put it in so when you read the slides after the presentation, you've actually got some ideas as to where to go about putting this into practice. So our biggest enemy in search, moving on to another slide deck, which again is heavily edited, is the back button. If I take the user to a page, they don't enjoy it, they're going to click the back button. And the back button is a really powerful signal to the search engine or the social media platform or the email platform. So whichever channel I'm marketing in when I'm online, be it search, social, email or others, the back button is a huge enemy. And as the machines get more and more powerful and start to understand our behaviour, the only way we can hope to do better online than our competitors is to do a better job for the user we're trying to please. Because the machines are very good now understanding our behaviour and interpreting what is and isn't happening on our various digital properties. So early versions of machine learning, we humans tell the machines some of the tests that they can use to help them decide what's good and what's bad. And the machines then very, very quickly go through the data, applying the tests we've given them and making those decisions. That's the very early versions of machine learning. Google have publicly said that when you do a Google search for a cat, with all the volumes of images that are uploaded to Google nowadays, they don't actually have people looking at the images deciding which ones are pictures of cats. And hey, there are lots of cats on the internet. They actually have machines that make those decisions. And early on, human beings told the machines what were the characteristics of a cat, and the machines used those tests to identify cats. But they've moved on since then. The machines now work out for themselves how to decide what's a cat and what's not a cat. And they make better decisions than we can, and they actually learn themselves. There's a really interesting piece of work that Google did on speech recognition, and they used a relatively small number of computers for the resources that Google have available for a relatively short period of time, and reduced the error rate in speech recognition by 30%. And Google didn't tell the machines how to identify which sounds were which words. The machines worked it out for themselves. So if anyone's feeling a bit daunted, it's quite challenging nowadays. And the days of being able to game the algorithm and do things which were purely to please Google and to please the search engines and the other social media platforms, those days are long gone. We have to focus nowadays on pleasing the user the whole time. Quite interestingly, RankBrain, which is Google's earliest machine learning, is now the third largest ranking signal on Google. And they wouldn't say what the first largest signal was and what the second largest signal was. My hunch is that links from other websites, links from other good quality websites that are relevant to your topic that have been earned rather than manufactured is probably up there in 1 or 2. And it's not just Google. Facebook, we had a change on Facebook a couple of years ago when all of a sudden brand pages could not get their message through unless they paid. And that's a trend that we see continuing across all of the social media platforms. Rather than showing people content, they've started to shut down and if it's a commercial message, they require payment. And Twitter are going the same way. I've seen lots of screams on Twitter from Twitter users asking them not to become Facebook, but it's happening. Whenever I log into Twitter, I'm always shown stuff that I don't really want to see, that Twitter are selecting algorithmically. So we have to think about, as marketers, how do we get our stuff to be in the stuff that Twitter is selecting to show to users. And Instagram. Early days for Instagram, but they're also going with an algorithm. So I think the conclusion we can draw that is any large online platform, be it a search engine or a social media platform, is going to be using sophisticated algorithms to decide what they show, what content they show to which users. And the days of being able to be slippery and take shortcuts, those days are long gone, and nowadays it's quality that counts. So it's a term that marketers use over and over again, and when they talk about engagement is obviously the user engaging with the content, but engagement is the number one metric. If we publish content that isn't engaging for the audience, then we're going to fail. How can I look and see what topics users have found interesting and engaging around a theme? Have you noticed on Google when you search that Google very helpfully suggests lots of other searches for you? Google Suggest is a great tool, and the suggestions they're making are driven by an algorithm that has measured the engagement of users in those suggested searches. Have you noticed on Chrome, on desktop or mobile, if you're in Chrome and it's auto-completing, it's actually using engagement data to decide what do you probably want next. Think back to Larry Page and Eric Schmidt, early days of Google, and they were thinking about how can I answer your question before you've even had to ask the question, and they're getting pretty close now. And it's the same with Google Maps and Google Local Search. They measure the engagement. The pages that people have clicked through onto previously that pleased them, that they didn't bounce from, are the pages that are more likely to be shown to future searchers. Social networks, trending content, these algorithms are all across the piece, whether it's a search engine or a social platform. They suggest which accounts to follow. Algorithms suggest which accounts to follow. Gmail. Gmail decide which email is important, and that's also based upon engagement. So hands up who's doing email marketing. Anybody here doing email marketing? Okay. Better make sure the emails you send are deemed to be of value by the people who receive them, because modern spam filters are not built around looking for words such as Viagra, as they used to be. Modern spam filters on platforms such as Gmail and Outlook and Yahoo Mail, they're all built around how do users of this mail platform react to these emails. And if you send an email out that people don't enjoy and don't engage with, especially if they hit the spam button, good luck getting your email to people's inbox in future. So it's all about reputation, and it's all based upon engagement. I think I've shown that before. It's all about your engagement reputation. And every time a user clicks the back button, it starts to eat into your reputation and your trust, and it's a very negative signal. So what can we do about it? How do we actually get our stuff through and please our audience? So we have to think about the search the user has done and what they're actually looking for. And we don't just have to ask superficial questions such as, who are my customers? We have to think about deeper questions such as, what is the need they're trying to meet with this search? And we have to make sure that our answer meets their needs. And very interestingly, some people doing the search aren't the customers that we're targeting. But if we don't meet the needs of those people as well, then when our customers do the same search, we won't be shown in the search results so prominently. So we have to think about the intent behind the query and make sure the results we present are very high quality. And if we have competitors, and hey, we all have competitors, and they're doing a better job with their content than we are, then we've got two choices really. We either up our game and start producing better, more relevant content, high quality content, or we should pack in and try to do content marketing. Content marketing has been a huge theme in the last couple of years, and rightly so, and when done well, it's a very effective, very powerful tool for business to communicate, but when done badly, it takes a lot of time and produces very few results. So we do a lot of work with clients trying to get their pages into the Google search results. And I think we all understand that the higher up the search results a page is shown, the more likely it is to get clicked on. And the likelihood of a page being clicked on is measured by a statistic of CTR, or click-through rate. So if my page is being shown at position 3, and I'm achieving the average CTR for position 3, Google are probably going to be happy to have me stay there. If my page achieves a lower click-through rate than it should, given position 3, I'm probably going to start falling down the search results. But if I can actually outperform the expected click-through rate, I'm probably going to start to rise up the search results. So it's all about user behavior and making sure that what we do matches the need of the user and providing really good quality content. So this slide is showing what we call a snippet. This is the information that's shown to a user in the search results. And what can we do as business owners to improve the quality of our snippets? We can think about these things. So 6 opportunities to make sure that your snippets are more appealing to the user and are more likely to get a click-through. And don't forget, better than average click-through rate means your search results entry will start to rise up the rankings, and below average click-through rates means you'll probably start to fall down. Google, have you noticed there is a slight benefit to new content when you publish it? There's a very old algorithm at Google called QDF, Query Deserves Freshness, and they think that users are probably more interested in the latest, freshest content than old, tired, stale content. And what they will do is they'll put content up in the search results just to see how it feels and see how users react to it, and then it will frequently drop away again. So republishing can often be a good tactic. And paid search, we do a lot of paid search for our clients at Mitra. Paid search can be extremely expensive for small businesses especially, but paid search can have an indirect influence on your natural search results. So if I look at some search results for a particular query, just looking at the organic results, the positions there in the natural search results are all occupied by the people spending lots of money on ads. So it's true to say that there's a Chinese wall at Google, and spending money on ads does not directly put you into the natural search results. But I think it's also true to say that when people become familiar with seeing you and you become trusted, they're more likely to click on your stuff. And one way to get yourself out in front of the audience is to think about spending on some ads. Google Trends, who's using Google Trends? Who's using AdWords Keyword Planner tool? Okay, so in Google AdWords, even if you're not an advertiser, there's a keyword planner, and you can actually have a look and see what searches people have done, and you can see how competitive those searches are, and you can look for related searches. However, in the last year or so, the keyword planner has become less and less useful, and in search we believe that Google are deliberately hiding information. But currently, Google have other tools where we can get some better information, and Google Trends is one of them. So, to try and think about how we apply this theme to all the efforts we make in marketing, better content is going to be more content. A few years ago, I'd have wanted to have lots and lots of pages around a very similar theme with lots of combinations of phrasing and wording, so I had every possible chance of getting into the search results. Nowadays, that would be a very poor tactic. I'm much better off having a single page that really comprehensively covers a topic than having a whole collection of very weak pages. And on social media, there are lots of statistics that people will give you about when you should tweet and how many Facebook status updates you should share. But the thing I would encourage you to think about more than that is, if you haven't got something good and interesting to say, probably best to stay quiet then and actually save your credibility so when you have got something compelling and interesting, because more compelling social shares mean that the social media platforms are more likely to show your stuff to people. Whereas if you go with the formulaic, I don't know, 4 tweets a day for a brand and 2 Facebook updates and all the rest of it, unless you've got something interesting to say, all you are doing is deliberately dumbing down and devaluing your reputation. So when you do have something good to say, no one's going to see it. So there are lots of statistics available for social media. The platforms themselves provide some really useful insight tools. I'd encourage you to look at them. And there are lots of very useful third-party tools as well. Look and see what worked and do more like the things that worked. Look and see what didn't work and do less like the things that didn't work. Try to raise your game. Try to do a better job for your audience. And if you haven't got something interesting to say, maybe stay quiet. Emails. These are all channels: search, social, email. They're just channels of communication through which we try to reach our audience and we share our content. If I send lots of emails and I don't have anything useful and people don't value the message, I'm going to get relegated to the spam folder. So fewer emails of better quality beat lots of emails of very poor quality. And there's a thing that all the email platforms calculate called sender reputation score. And if you get involved in email marketing, sender reputation is a huge issue. And that's the reason why people who send lots of rubbish email can't get their email delivered. People who send high quality email that people appreciate and value can get their email delivered. Interestingly, in search, we all get very excited when we manage to get a page higher up on Google, so it starts to get some traffic. But actually, if you have a page that's higher up on Google that isn't performing as well as it should do and users are bouncing from, you could almost be best advised to pull that page from Google rather than have a page up there that isn't performing well and users aren't going to be appreciating. So it's all about user experience. If I think about the user, and I think about their needs and what their intent was and how I can be helpful to them, then broadly speaking, I'll be appreciated. And getting back to being social and being human and forgetting about the machines for a moment, we all appreciate people who are helpful. And there are some very basic psychological principles that say people who are helpful, good things tend to happen to them. If all we do on social media is shout about ourselves and try and promote our own marketing messages, we aren't helpful and good things probably won't happen. So in the world of content marketing, whether it's by email, search or social, the very best content wins, the mediocre content gets absolutely nothing at all. And how can I give people a great experience? Speed. Nowadays, the expectation is that websites will be fast, so take a good look at your own website if you have one. Have a look at it on a desktop search and also on mobile and tablet and see how you look and see how quickly you load. And if you're not loading quickly, have a chat with your marketing agency or web agency and see what can be done about that, because having put all the work into publishing some information, it'd be very frustrating, wouldn't it, to lose the audience just because it was slow. And don't forget that nowadays it's a mobile first world. It's not good enough to design for the desktop web experience. You have to think about tablets and mobile the whole time. And that's true of web and social. It's becoming increasingly a mobile world. And the prizes all go to the businesses that produce content that users find helpful and insightful, because all the clever machine learning algorithms recognize what content has been effective and reward it and send it more traffic and more visits. And have a good look at your pages and decide, have you put up any barriers that you needn't have put up? Nothing gets in the way and annoys visitors more than excessive ads being shown on a page, or a page that's difficult to understand, or even a page that's poorly designed. And have a look at how am I pleasing my non-customers, because if I don't look after those people as well, then when my customers are searching, they won't get to see me either. So we have to try to please a broader audience rather than the audience we're actually targeting, otherwise we won't do well on search, social or email. And we have to think about targeting the actual intent of the search rather than the actual keywords that are hidden within the query. And our most important KPIs, the things we should really measure and care a great deal about, is engagement. And one of the key stats we have for that is bounce rate on the web page. And there are lots of other stats for engagement on the social media platforms as well. And when we have CTAs, calls to action, if we want people to take an action, we need to test, and make sure that the page we take them to after they've actually clicked through on the call to action is one that does a really good job for them. So it's 2016, and digital marketing nowadays is all about engagement and engagement-based reputation. So another slide deck, heavily edited again, and again the links to the slides are online. And every year Moz do a survey of professional SEOs, and they ask, what do you think is really making a difference to your campaigns now? And I've excerpted a few slides here that I think are of use to this audience. And there's a lot about links and social shares. And it's actually possible to achieve a ranking in Google just by building a lot of links. And the reason why this is funny is that Matt Cutts is one of the heads of search at Google. He's currently on sabbatical, but he's a very important guy at Google on the search algorithm. And for a joke, an SEO managed to get a page ranking for that search just by pointing enough links at it, to make a point that links really do still carry a lot of weight. And I won't cover all the details about link building and links because it's a very complex topic, and you can read more on the slides and read more after this event. There are at least 20 factors we consider when evaluating a link. But if you go to lots of talks about marketing and web marketing and social marketing, nowadays you'll be told that we don't build links anymore. And it's not necessary, because if you publish great content, it will earn its own links. And unfortunately, that isn't actually true, unless your content is the very best content in the niche that you're working in. This is a curve showing, in a particular niche of content, how many links each piece of content got. And I think you might notice there's quite a large spike at the beginning of the axis, And what it actually says is, the best content in the niche, people link to it because it's a useful resource. And because people have linked to it, that's a big signal to Google, and that content will do really well in Google search. The other content, not so much. So this concept of publishing good content and getting links only applies to you if you publish really, really great content. So how it's supposed to work, and you've probably seen presentations that work like this, I publish stuff, I promote it, people find out about it, and then I get links and I get search traffic. But unfortunately, that's not true, unless your content is of the very highest quality. And even when your content is still of the very highest quality, The dirty secret of search marketing is that we still have to build links if we want things to rank strongly on Google. So, social sharing and links only go to the best content, and you have to work at that, and you have to work at getting links built and earning links. And moving along, so my summary of what we've had to see so far as our time is moving along now. The first point is it's all about the robots. And I think it's naive to assume that we puny humans with our feeble human intelligence can actually think our way past armies of machines. And the machines are actually doing a job. And if you think about it, it actually benefits us as humans because these machine learning algorithms make sure that on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Google, and lots of other platforms, only stuff that humans like us have actually valued and enjoyed does well. And the poor content doesn't do well. And the machines are much better at promoting good stuff and demoting bad stuff. Google's motto, which I'm a Google partner, so I shouldn't be too negative about them, but Google's mantra is "Don't be evil." And if you look at the way that search results have evolved over the years, Google maybe have a different idea of what evil is to the rest of us, because nowadays your natural search results don't even appear above the fold, and we now have 4 ad units showing at the top of the Google search results page. But the idea is Google aren't evil, and in the battle of man versus machines, man's going to win. I think man can win, providing we think about the audience, create great content, and be the best. So if we are the best, our content wins, we get the links, we get the search rankings, and our business prospers and does well. If we're mediocre and second best, then we don't really do very well at all. By the way, I think that they're the best, not Top Gun. So how do we stand out from the crowd in an increasingly congested marketplace with lots of content that our audience can choose from? Think about the user, think about their needs, talk to them, put some effort in, produce one piece of really great content rather than 10 pieces of mediocre content. And I haven't had my cliche meter running today. I've probably had a few cliches already, but you're about to see the greatest or the largest cliche in digital marketing, which is that content really is king. If you're going to win, you have to work hard, you have to produce stuff that people want to see that's going to be helpful to them. And if you don't do that, then you aren't going to get the results that you're seeking. And I think Benjamin Franklin summed it up really well. I increasingly find for social media marketing as well, it can't just be done online. Nowadays, to achieve good results, you actually have to have something worth talking about. And yes, there's a lot you can do by engaging with followers, reaching out to people, making friends, being helpful. That stuff can all happen online. But I find that the very best campaigns, the most successful brands, are actually doing things in the real world as well as online. So I think Ben Franklin probably had it right a while ago. Now, I'm not certain how we are on time. Am I a little early for questions? We do questions? Okay. So hands up who's got an active Facebook marketing campaign. So quite a few on Facebook. Who's got a website that they're promoting? Hands up for websites. Lots of websites. We did Twitter already. How about LinkedIn? Who finds LinkedIn is a great place to do marketing for their business? Okay, who thinks that Facebook is only for business to consumer? Nobody. Who thinks that LinkedIn is only for business to business? Is it question time? Sorry.
Just going to take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring tea and coffees in.
Okay.
We're just going to switch from streaming to speaking.
Okay. Thank you for your attention. Let's take a short break. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions, please, then? Don't all rush at once. Gentleman at the back.
Yeah, what do you think about video and the social networks are quite they're more interested in video content than they are in any other kind of content at the moment.
Okay, Graham, so we've just had a question about video content. Is that more important now on social media networks?
Video is hugely important. I think television's done rather well in the last 30 or 40 years, hasn't it? And we're all trained to watch television, and everyone's racing to be the television in your pocket. And Facebook video is growing exponentially. YouTube is the second largest search engine, and Facebook show an awful lot of video as well. Google sadly limit which videos they'll show in their search results. They'll only show videos from YouTube and Vimeo. So if you're going to put some video out that you'd like to be in Google, then YouTube or Vimeo would be a good idea. But I was just having a chat with a lady in the coffee break, and video is a really effective medium, really powerful. Absolutely. Okay, next question.
I'll just hold it.
Okay, if you unmuted this slide.
Okay, should we move over to...
Advice about LinkedIn. Just test this a bit.
I can hear somebody.
Yeah.
Can we ask a question in Hereford?
Yes, please.
Okay, how can we use LinkedIn to reach our target market as a business?
Okay, so great question, how to use LinkedIn. I think it's like all the social media platforms, you have to think about who are the audience and what do they need. It's important to create some content that's going to be really useful for them. And it's also about being social and networking with people. So there are probably groups you can join that are relevant to your industry or the niche that you're working in. There are probably colleagues you had in your current business or have had in former businesses. And it's about networking with people, making some friends. There's a great way to get someone's attention, which is to share their stuff for them. And you'd be surprised how often people will reciprocate back and share your stuff if you're busy sharing their stuff. The test the whole time has to be produce something people actually want to read that's relevant for the audience. And I don't see LinkedIn as any different to any other social media platform. And it's not just for B2B either. Thank you.
Can we ask questions, please?
Please.
French tags.
Shall I just ask this one first? What are the advantages of starting a Google AdWords campaign?
Wow, how many hours have you got? So Google AdWords, Google's revenue from AdWords is falling, or the rate of growth is falling, but it's still growing really high. The person who makes the most money out of the Google AdWords campaign is usually Google. So if you haven't used AdWords previously, you probably want to get some help from someone who knows how to do it. AdWords is a great research tool. So I mentioned in the talk that nowadays it's not possible to get accurate keyword data from Google. Within AdWords there's a part called the Keyword Planner, which used to be a great resource, but Google have now deliberately obfuscated the data and it's not as helpful as it used to be. So if you set up some campaigns targeting keywords you're interested in, and use a matching type in AdWords called a broad match modified, which is I target the search. If I wanted to get found, for example, for social media speaker, I might type the phrase social media speaker, but plus is in front of the words, so those words have to be present in the query that the ad is targeting. And what will happen is when you run the ads, you can set a budget so you limit the amount of financial exposure, and you'll see which searches people actually do, and use that as a keyword research tool, and then roll that back into your social media content and roll it into your website's content, and actually prime your organic search campaign using AdWords as a keyword research tool. But ads work, they really work. The problem with ads for a small business usually is it's an auction marketplace, and not everybody in the marketplace behaves rationally. And if you're competing against other businesses who will pay more for a click on an ad than you can possibly ever earn from that click, there's nothing that you can do about that. So keep an eye on budgets, get some professional help, and AdWords is a great keyword research tool to help your social and organic marketing. Thank you.
Yeah, face towards there.
Can we ask how effective hashtags are in Facebook?
I think you maybe know the answer to the question in the question. Twitter originated the hashtag concept or made it popular, certainly. Facebook took them across. I don't see people having great success with hashtag campaigns on Facebook. I think it's far more important to use natural language. Hashtags can certainly get you some exposure, but the problem you'll find is we've all seen status updates on Facebook or tweets on Twitter where it's hash this, hash that, hash everything else, and it actually becomes gobbledygook and indecipherable. So I think it's more important to write an interesting status update and use hashtags judiciously, but hashtags I think have more of a place on maybe Instagram, dogs of Instagram, and more of a place on Twitter than they do on Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question, please.
Yeah.
You mentioned about refreshing the web pages and changing the content. At what stage would you think that would become relevant? And is there certain parts of the web page that's would be more beneficial to change than others?
Okay, Graham, we've just had a question about web pages. How often you should update them, what parts of the page you should update more frequently, and do certain areas have more benefit at being updated?
Okay, thank you for the question. I don't want to get bogged down with title tags, meta description tags, headers, footers, and all that. Just look at the page as a normal human being would do and see, is the page useful to me? Keep a very close eye on your analytics to see how the pages are performing. And if you have a page that's working well, that has a low bounce rate, and you actually get some conversions from, don't touch it, don't touch what's working. The pages you want to concentrate your efforts on are the ones where people are bouncing off, it's not working so well. From a Google point of view, Google care about the stuff that the user sees, and that's the stuff that's at the top of the page above the fold that you don't have to scroll to. And if your web design uses any features such as click to expand to reveal more content, or if content is on tabs, if you have tabs on the page where you have to go to another tab of the page to see the rest of the content, it's the stuff that the user sees right away that Google gives the greatest weight to. So if the page is working, leave it alone. If it's not working, fix it. And think about it like a human being. Try not to be a search engineer the whole time. Thank you. Next question, please.
Hereford? Can I ask how you could go about maximising a company page in LinkedIn? It's found to be quite limited when you're comparing it with a personal page.
Great question. Increasingly, without the use of paid promotion, it's very hard to get traffic to a company brand page on any of the social platforms, because they think if you're getting a commercial benefit, then you should be paying them for that stuff. Social networks are all about networking, and it's not so much the brand itself, but it's the people at the brand. And the old cliche is that people buy people. And we see brands having a lot of success when the staff at the brand use their social media, their personal social media profiles as part of the business campaign. Now, some people get quite uncomfortable with that, about blurring the distinction between what's personal and what's business. But the fact is, Facebook are going to show stuff in the newsfeed from your friends, and LinkedIn are going to show stuff in the newsfeed from your network of people. Brand pages, not so much, unless you pay money to have promotions run. So the brand page should be a good presence, it should have some good content there, but probably the most effective strategy on LinkedIn, as with the other platforms, is to have the people who make up the business use their personal profiles to promote the business as well.
Thank you.
Next question at the back.
Yeah.
We spoke in the break about content and language.
we look at our business education. How do you get the balance between being professional and the language of young people, for example?
Okay, so we've had a question about content and language and how you find the balance between targeting your audience with their language and jargon and remaining professional.
It's a great question. It's a very tricky balance to strike as well, because there's nothing worse than being the hip teacher, is there, that's down with the kids. You know, that doesn't work at all. But if you're running an academic course on a particular topic and you promote it and use that term only, and the young people or perhaps their parents that you're trying to attract to the course are using different terminology, you're not going to get found. So I think the first stage of any marketing campaign should always be, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth and use them in that ratio. So start off with some research, talk to the audience that you're trying to reach and ask them how you can be helpful and what searches they would be interested in doing, and then create some content that actually speaks to the searches they're doing. And it's okay to use variations of language within a page. In fact, it's quite a good thing. There is a Google algorithm called LDA, and it's all about understanding the semantics of language. And if you want to get found, for example, for the term fireman, if you also mention words such as fire engine, fire, and hose on the page becomes more like a fireman page than a page that just uses the word fireman over and over again. So variations in language are probably quite natural, but obviously you have to maintain a professional institution's approach and stay on brand, and that's the really difficult balancing act. And getting it past corporate and the marketing department is very tough as well. But those are the challenges we face as marketers. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next question, please.
Can I ask about content at the top of the page?
You certainly can.
Which has more value, words or pictures?
We've had some very, very high quality questions today. Thank you for that one. I think educationists will tell you that when it comes to making an impact upon people, you have to use a variety of senses, and people are often visual communicators, so pictures work extremely well. Google don't have the time when they're crawling websites to interpret every image file that they see. So if you are going to include pictures in your web pages in prominent positions, please make sure that the image file name has a meaningful name. So if I have a picture of a fireman on my web page, I'm going to give it a file name of fireman.jpg rather than image1.jpg. So that's really helpful. And there's also an HTML tag that you can use as well, which is the image meta tag. So this is quite technical, but hidden behind the scenes within the HTML code of the page, you can actually add a tag to describe the image, and that's the image meta tag. So if I had a picture of a fireman, I'd have an image meta tag that contained the phrase fireman, and that helps Google understand what the page or what the picture is about. I think it's about striking a balance. I think people, if you're trying to communicate a message and create some content, you have to be visually interesting. And I think design really matters. I think design is part of creating high quality content, and that includes graphics. But of course the words matter as well, because if you're selling a complex service and you're dealing in complex topics, we can't communicate only visually. So I think I will sit on the fence with your question and say that we need to have both pictures and words at the top of the page. Thank you. Any other questions, please? From anywhere? Gentleman at the back.
Yeah, how much weight do you put on how much do you invest in your copywriting and the value of the words that you're writing? Isn't that the main cost of the marketing?
Okay, so we've had a question about how much do you invest in the value of the copywriting?
Quality of copywriting is absolutely huge. It always has been. In my agency, our trainees read some books that were written in the 1930s and 1940s by some of the great copywriters before there was an internet, and they were actually communicating by mail shot and by catalogue. language is very effective as a tool for communication. And a great example of that is one of my favourite stories, which is the $300 million button. Who's heard about the $300 million button? Okay, so the $300 million button, a large US corporation had a conversion form where they asked the user to enter their name and their email address. And the button used to say the word register. And we did some testing, and we're all about testing because unless we test different variations of a page and different variations of copy, how can we know which is going to work best? And it's very hard to predict which will be most effective. So they ran some testing and tried a variation of the page where they changed the word register, I think it was to the word continue. And they put a little bit of messaging there as well, some copywriting that said, don't worry, it's okay, you're not making any great commitment by continuing. The conversion rate of that form leapt up astronomically. They measured the impact of that on the organisation's revenue, and multiplying it over the course of a 12-month period, that one change of that one word brought in $300 million. It's the $300 million button. So words matter, and language matters, and copywriting is extremely important. Thank you. Good questions. At the front.
So you said a tweet has a half-life of about 10 seconds. So it seems that scheduling is important because you want to kind of hit the right, the biggest number of people, I guess, have the right impact. Have you got any tips on how to identify or optimise the best time for scheduling your tweets?
Okay, we've had a question about using Twitter and the best time to optimise scheduling your tweets. Any tips?
Another great question. Scheduling is a tool. I wouldn't overuse scheduling. I'd mix it up with some live work as well. I think we've all heard about the Joan Rivers tweet from Beyond the Grave. She had a scheduling set too far ahead. Sadly, she passed away and carried on tweeting. So scheduling is a tool to be used cautiously. We like a tool called Buffer. It's one that we use at my agency. We also use Hootsuite for larger, more complex campaigns. As for the correct time to schedule a tweet, the correct time for me to schedule a tweet and the correct time for you to schedule a tweet are different because we have different audiences and we're tweeting on different topics. And there are lots of good tools now. Moz used to have one called Follow a Wonk, which I think they're taking down, but there are quite a few tools that we use. Some of the scheduling tools actually have data built in, analytics built into them. I know that Buffer does. And what we do in my agency is we experiment around what worked and what didn't work. And we try different days of the week and time of day. And the big secret is everybody gets very social on Saturday. You know, so there are some common sense things you can do, but you shouldn't follow those rules of thumb dogmatically. The same as with email marketing. You're not supposed to send email marketing on Mondays or Fridays, but some of our best campaigns have gone on Friday afternoon. So I think it's like everything, experiment and test and measure. And the platforms we use nowadays have really good tools built in for measurement, so why wouldn't you use them? Thank you.
The challenge I've always had is working out which is the first platform that I focus on, and then which then bounces to other things. So, for example, should it be the website that then drives to other things, or should it be a Facebook page, personal profile, or business page, etc.?
Okay, we've had another question about social media and whether social media, which platforms to use really, and should that drive traffic to your website or should it be the other way around?
I think that the question's a really useful one and it comes up all the time. We have limited time, and in a small business, you know, time is a huge pressure, and social media takes a huge amount of time. If we're going to be publishing information, we have to think about the needs of the audience. And the audience on the website and the audience on Twitter are different. They certainly require different length of content. And the audience on Facebook is different to the audience on Twitter again. So this probably isn't the answer you want to hear, but you probably have to write different variations of the content for different platforms. As to which platform you should target first really depends upon your audience and what you're trying to achieve. Facebook is very much a walled garden, for example. Once you enter Facebook, if I'm in Facebook mode, I want to stay on Facebook. So if you try to drag me away from Facebook to your website, you'll do so kicking and screaming. So if you're talking to people on Facebook, stay on Facebook. If people are on Twitter, they're on Twitter. This concept of getting people away from where they want to be across to your website is probably the wrong way to go about it, in my view, unless they choose to. By all means, include a link. So I publicise something on Twitter, I say there's going to be a really useful set of slides from a really great social media tool, and if you want to download the slides, here's the link. So I talk to you where you are, to suit the needs of where you are. I don't presume that I can drag you away from where you've chosen to be to where I want you to be, but if you'd like to go and look into further depth, then it's over here. You have a greater chance of reaching the audience as a small business on the social media platforms than you do with your website. So probably long-form content on the web, promoted and repurposed on social platforms.
If we could
Could
take...
just ask what
yeah.
is the measure of a good bounce rate?
The measure of a good bounce rate, less than it used to be. It's impossible to give an answer that fits to all pages because all pages are different. In fact, there are some searches on Google that don't even result in a click. If I search for weather, for example, Google will frequently show me the weather forecast actually within the search results page. I don't even have to click through to a website to see the answers anymore. And roughly half of all searches on Google now end up with the user staying on Google or going to another Google-controlled website. So looking at a particular page, if it's a contact us page and people are going there for the purpose of discovering a telephone number, it's going to have a high bounce rate. They're going to get to the page, learn what they needed and leave. So some pages you'd expect to have high bounce rates, maybe 80%. On the other hand, if it's a piece of content that's 2,000 words, all about, I don't know, foreign policy in the Middle East, and someone's arrived at that page by following a highly relevant search term, I would hope they'd actually stay and engage with the content and consume the content, and maybe a bounce rate of more than 20% would be a problem. So there's no one size fits all. It's about what's the page for, what's the user doing, and where did they come from. But the short answer to your question is that a good bounce rate is less than it used to be. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions from Hereford or Telford?
Yes, please. Can I ask, is having a blog feature on a website important on the website?
If you have something interesting to say, yes, absolutely. Often small business owners can't publish on their own website without involving a web agency. And that's getting better nowadays with content management systems like WordPress. But if you have a blog and you have something interesting to say, why wouldn't you publish in the blog? And don't forget that blogs can contain lots of interesting images, and they can also embed videos as well. So think about audio-visual, image and text communication, and call it a blog because people know what a blog is nowadays. And if you have something interesting to say and you can find the time to create some useful blog posts, then I think it's a very worthwhile tactic.
Anne?
Blog, you can put it on your website and then share that blog from your website onto Facebook to save you time doing it twice.
Did you get that?
I got the question, yes. It was, if I publish on the website, I can use some clever technological magic to automatically post to Facebook for me. And I can do lots of cross-posting between platforms. I can even use a tool called If This Then That, which has a great name, which is, I think it's IFTTT. Great tool. It looks for something, you create a recipe, and then it does the action you've asked it to. But you have to think, is that what people are looking for? Are they looking to see their Facebook news feed full of blog notifications the whole time? So you just have to think about using that kind of technology carefully. But absolutely, publish long form on your blog. Perhaps repurpose the content and write it in a different voice for the different audience, because when we're writing, we first have to understand who is the audience we're trying to communicate with, and also what is it we would like to say, and it better be interesting to them. And maybe the Facebook audience, they haven't got so much time for your status update as readers of your blog have, so maybe a shorter form summary rather than just a bare link. If it's just a link that says, here is a blog post titled Holidays in Provence, then that might attract people's attention. But I suspect if you wrote a paragraph or two as a nice introduction, summing up why you'd want to read this piece, the status update would probably produce much better results for you.
Thank you. And we had one more question from here.
I just wanted to ask a question about using, so if you're using Hootsuite or Twitter where you're using a Bitly or something URL, is there resistance to that from general consumers that they don't actually know what a Bitly or an link is?
I'm just going to nudge my... Oh, sorry, I'd like to repeat the question.
Yeah. We've just had a question about using Bitly and shortening URL names, so whether this is advisable or not.
So I'm just going to nudge my slides on one slide. Okay, so the download link for the slides for this talk is bit.ly/Graham Wing, because the topic is how to win friends and influence people on Google and social media. I think people are used to it nowadays. I think people are used to URL shorteners, and actually if you're posting status updates on any of the major social media platforms, they're going to shorten those links for you anyway. I think Bitly is quite useful, or one of the other shorteners, goo.gl for example, in that you can get some analytics. The other interesting thing about Bitly is, if you know a Bitly, you can actually go to the Bitly link on the Bitly website and see the stats for it as well, even if it's not your link. That's quite useful. So URL shorteners I think are a useful tool, particularly if you're doing multi-channel marketing, as we all should be nowadays, so digital marketing online and print marketing offline. And no one wants to have to print or type in a great big long URL, so a nice short URL is much easier to use. And if your audience are technologically sophisticated, why not wrap a nice QR code over the top of the shortened URL as well, so they can just zap the thing on their phone when they're looking at the screen or looking at the print piece. So the question was URL shorteners, and I say why not. In fact, I've used one for these slides. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from anywhere? I think we're
done.
coming to an end, yeah. So once again, Graham, thank you very much for coming today and talking, and round of applause for Graham.
Thank you. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.